Welcome back, listeners, and we are still continuing to talk about the oil and gas exploration in Namibia. And just to go back to what you mentioned earlier, Mr. Daniel Stamman, is that you say that we will not be seeing a lot of movement in regards to oil and gas in Namibia for this year as well as for next year.
In the public eye.
In the public eye.
Onshore, here in Windhoek or in any town onshore, on land.
So at this very moment, there's a lot of, I should say, conferences and summits happening in regards to also educating Namibians.
There's a lot of people who are trying to make a quick buck out of the oil and gas.
I wanted to come to that question in regards to that. So there's a lot of happening, a lot of trainings and workshops, and I don't know if people have not been educated enough, and I'm talking about the people sitting in the higher places, higher levels, in order to make this work for Namibia, in order for Namibians to be able to benefit from this as well. But of course, I'm talking about policy, people that are going to change the policies, people that are writing the policies right now, trying to make money from this as well. But it also seems that Namibia is very far from making this happen if you are referring to 10 years. For me, it seems like we will still have to wait for another 20 years.
Yeah, let's break it down. Then you understand the complexity. Okay. Remember I said we are where Guyana was 20 years ago. So we are regarded as a frontier exploration zone. Now the question is, how are we going to leapfrog that Guyana process? Because we don't need to follow the same route, but it is inevitable that we will have to follow it to some extent. Because what we need onshore is, first of all, very expensive. Completely out of our government budget and out of any company, local company's budget, even out of any South African company's budget. We need the backbone to be built, to be established for an entirely new industry, which we never had before. That's why I said in our first part of our talk that the exploration side, the drilling of wells, the extraction of samples, the analysis, the determining the quality of the types of oil that we find. Remember, there are now 7 active blocks, where anything from a teaspoon to a truck full of oil have been found. And can you remember about a year ago, I told the story about 33 years ago when I was in the Minister of Finance's office. He showed me all the samples. And he said, they will plug the hole with a radioactive beacon and they will come back 30 years later when they need it, and then the real exploration will start. This is where we are now. 30 years later, and suddenly Namibia is on everybody's lips, and suddenly we as Namibians are being led by the nose. Why? Because we don't have the local capacity yet. Now we come back to you asking me what will happen this year. I'm saying nothing very much. It's a slow, cumbersome, expensive process. But let's take a look at the skills that you need. And I'm just focusing on the engineering side. You take about 5 years to train an engineer. Then he needs about 5 years experience before he can register as a professional engineer. Have you seen that designation, professional engineer, which is an indication of his professional standing. Then he needs another 10 years in the industry to start knowing what he's talking about. So you don't prepare an engineer that can compete in a highly competitive, highly technical, complex field under 20 years. So in terms of local capacity, I think you're not that far off the mark when you say we're looking at 20 years. Doesn't mean that we must stop exploring and stop helping the industry. But if our long-term goal, let's make it realistic, and let's say if our 50-year goal is to have a Namibian industry operated by Namibians, owned in conjunction with foreign investment or in partnership with foreign investment, and employing basically only Namibians, then we have to start with that process now. And if you look at the progress that we've made, I don't think there are 5 people at both NUST or UNEM that are now studying specifically to become engineers in oil and gas. Because they first have to become chemical engineers. And I've discussed the process. And then after a while they must become competent in being an engineer in that field. But on top of that, you need all the technical people to operate the rig. You know, on some of these big rigs, there are 2,000 people working there. Now, that's not an employment station. They're not going to put the jobless youth on an oil rig.
Of course,
it's very dangerous. You have to know what you're doing. You know?
Yeah.
It's huge employment potential, provided the people have the skill. And this is where we're lacking. And this is what we need to address in conjunction with the infrastructure that we're building while the companies are carrying on their offshore exploration.
On that note, Mr. Steinman, let's quickly go for another short